I've driven the I-95 corridor 1,000 times. It's one of those stretches of highway that feels less like a road and more like a trance state, especially when you're doing the graveyard run from college back to your hometown. The kind of night where the air feels heavy, saturated with a cold mist that never quite turns into actual rain, but keeps your windshield wipers on that annoying intermittent setting. Swish. Pause. Swish. Pause. I remember the specific boredom of that drive. It wasn't just quiet, it was textureless. The only thing keeping me company was a lukewarm cup of gas station coffee that tasted faintly of burnt hazelnuts and the plastic lid it came with. I took a sip, grimacing as the tepid liquid hit my tongue. On the radio, the signal was fading in and out, drifting between a static-filled talk show about alien abductions and dreams by Fleetwood Mac. I remember humming along to the bass line, tapping my fingers on the steering wheel, just trying to keep my brain engaged. My dashboard clock glowed a dull green. 2:14 a.m. I shifted in my seat, the leather cold against my back. I could smell the faint scent of the pine air freshener dangling from the mirror, mixed with the smell of wet asphalt coming through the vents. It was mundane. It was safe. It was the definition of routine. I was worried about my midterms, about whether I'd remembered to lock my apartment door, about how much gas was left in the tank. I wasn't worried about my life. That changed when the car started to shudder. It wasn't a violent shake, just a subtle vibration in the steering column. I turned the radio down, my brow furrowing. Is it the alignment? Did I throw a weight? I tried to rationalize it immediately. My brain whispered, it's just the road surface. They've been paving this section for months. But then the vibration turned into a rhythmic thump, thump. I sighed. Thump, loud and dramatic in the empty cabin. You have got to be kidding me, I said to no one. I checked the mirrors. The highway behind me was a gaping maw of blackness. No headlights, no trucks, just the red glow of my taillights reflecting off the wet tar. I eased the car under the shoulder, the gravel crunching loudly under my tires, a harsh, gritty sound that cut through the smooth, white noise of the night. I put the car in park and killed the engine. The silence that rushed in was immediate and suffocating. I sat there for a moment, just listening. The wind was picking up, whistling slightly through the crack in my window. I grabbed my phone, 2 bars of service, enough to call AAA if I needed to. But I didn't want to wait 2 hours in the dark if I could fix it myself. I knew how to change a tire. My dad had made sure of that before I left for school. I grabbed the flashlight from the glove box and stepped out. The cold hit me instantly. It was a biting, damp chill that seeped right through my hoodie. I walked around to the passenger side rear tire. Sure enough, it was shredded. Not just flat, shredded. Great, I muttered, my breath blooming in white puffs in front of the flashlight beam. I was halfway through getting the jack out of the trunk when I heard it. Crunch. I froze. My hand tightened around the tire iron. My brain immediately went into overdrive, scanning the catalog of night sounds to find a match. It was a deer, I told myself, or a raccoon. Just an animal foraging in the ditch. I whipped the flashlight beam toward the tree line. Nothing. Just the swaying branches of naked oaks and the tall yellow grass bowing in the wind. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Get it together, I whispered. You're spooking yourself. I went back to work. I cranked the jack, the metal creaking in protest. I got the lug nuts off. I was just pulling the flat tire off the hub when a pair of headlights crested the hill behind me. They were bright, blindingly white LEDs that cut through the darkness like lasers. I stood up, shielding my eyes. The vehicle slowed down. It was a dark SUV, maybe a Chevy Tahoe. It pulled onto the shoulder about 50 feet behind me. My stomach dropped. Not because of fear, initially, but because of that social awkwardness you feel when a stranger approaches. I didn't want help. I just wanted to finish this and leave. The SUV sat there for a moment, idling. The engine had a low, throaty rumble. The man stepped out. Opened. He was tall, wearing a thick canvas jacket and a baseball cap pulled low. He raised a hand in a friendly wave. "Need a hand there, miss?" he called out. His voice was deep, carrying easily over the wind. I tightened my grip on the tire iron, keeping it behind my leg. "I'm good," I shouted back, forcing a smile I didn't feel. "Just finishing up. My dad taught me well." He chuckled. It was a dry sound. He started walking toward me. He wasn't rushing, but he wasn't meandering either. His stride was purposeful. "That's good," he said, getting closer. "But those lug nuts can be tricky. I've got a hydraulic jack in the back. Make it go a lot faster." "Really, I'm fine," I said, my voice rising an octave. My internal alarm bells were starting to ring now. Why didn't he stop walking? Most people, if you wave them off, they stop. They respect the boundary. He stopped about 10 feet away. He was older than I thought, maybe mid-40s, with a face that was aggressively average. He looked like a dad. He looked like a high school football coach. He didn't look like a monster. "You know," he said, glancing at my flat tire, and then back at me. "It's dangerous out here. Lots of weirdos on this stretch of highway." "My boyfriend is on his way," I lied. The words tumbled out before I could check them. "He's just a few miles back. He stopped for gas." The man's smile didn't waver, but his eyes, they changed. They went flat. The warmth evaporated from his expression, leaving something cold and calculating behind. He looked at the empty highway behind his car, then back at me. "Is he?" he asked softly. That was the moment. That was the moment the mundane ended and the horror began. He took a step forward. "I think you're lying," he said. I scrambled backward, the tire iron heavy in my hand. "Stay back," I yelled, abandoning the polite facade. "Easy now," he said, reaching into his jacket pocket. I didn't wait to see what he was pulling out. I turned and bolted toward the driver's side of my car. "Hey!" he shouted. The friendly facade was gone now. His voice was a bark of command. I heard his boots hitting the gravel. Heavy, fast thuds. Thump, thump, thump. Just like the flat tire, he hit the door. Fast split second later, I threw myself into the driver's seat and slammed the lock button. His fist hammered against the glass. I screamed, fumbling for my keys, which were, oh God, they were still in the ignition. But the car was jacked up. I couldn't drive. I was a sitting duck. He was pulling at the handle, violently yanking it up and down. His face was pressed against the window, distorted by the glass. He wasn't smiling anymore. He was mouthing words I couldn't hear, his eyes wide and manic. Then he stopped. He looked back sat there for an hour. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just stared at the empty road, clutching the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. The smell of the pine air freshener was still there. The coffee was still in the cup holder. The song on the radio had changed to something upbeat and pop, completely at odds with the terror freezing my blood. When the police finally arrived, they found a zip tie and a roll of duct tape lying in the gravel where he had been standing. He hadn't been reaching for a phone. I still drive that highway sometimes, but I never stop. Not for gas, not for coffee, and certainly not for anyone trying to be a good Samaritan. Because I know now that the scariest things don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they just look like a guy offering to help you change a tire. If you grew up in the late 90s, you know exactly what a Saturday afternoon smelled like. It was a hyper-specific mixture of chlorine from the decorative fountains, the sugary yeast scent of Auntie Anne's pretzels, and the chemical tang of department store perfume. To me, that smell was safety. It was civilization. I was 7 years old in 1998. The mall wasn't just a place to shop, it was the center of the universe. It was bright, loud, and full of infinite possibilities. My mom had dragged me to Dillard's. She was looking for a dress for her sister's wedding. A very specific shade of periwinkle blue that apparently didn't exist in nature, but she was determined to find it. I remember the boredom physically hurting me. I was sitting on the floor, hidden within the circular rack of clearance coats, watching my mom hold up hanger after hanger. "Just 5 more minutes, Sammy," she said, her voice distracted. She looked tired. She was a single mom working 2 jobs, and this was her one afternoon to get things done. I loved her, but at 7, I didn't understand her exhaustion. I only understood my own boredom. I had my toy with me. It was a knockoff transformer I'd gotten from a Happy Meal. I was making it walk along the white tile grout, imagining the floor was a frozen tundra the robot had to cross. Step, step, step. I was so focused on the robot that I didn't notice the shoes at first. They were red flats, not shiny, but a dull, worn leather. They stopped right in front of my robot's path. I looked up, past the floral skirt, past the beige cardigan, all the way up to the face. She was an older woman, maybe 60. She had hair like cotton candy, white and fluffy and teased high. She wore thick glasses on a gold chain. She looked like every librarian, every grandmother, every Sunday school teacher I had ever met. She was smiling down at me, her head tilted to the side like a bird. "Well, hello there," she said. Her voice was soft, like warm honey. "That is a very serious mission your robot is on." I was a shy kid, but she didn't feel like a stranger. Strangers were scary men in trench coats. Strangers were people who offered you rides in vans. This was just a grandma. "It's not a mission," I corrected her, clutching the toy. "He's lost. He's trying to find his base." The woman's smile widened, crinkling the corners of her eyes. She crouched down. Her knees popped audibly, a dry crack that made her giggle. "Oh, the poor thing," she whispered. "Being lost is no fun at all. My grandson has a robot just like that. Except, oh my, his is much bigger. It has lights that flash when you push a button." My eyes widened. "Lights? Red and blue ones?" She nodded. She glanced over at my mom, who was currently arguing with the sales clerk about a return policy. My mom You're a good boy. But look. She shifted slightly, pointing to the open archway of the department store. We can see the entrance to the arcade from right here. We'll just go wave at him. Maybe show him your robot so he doesn't feel so sad. It would be a good Samaritan deed. A good Samaritan. I knew that term from church. It meant being a hero. Is he really sad? I asked. She made a tragic face, her bottom lip trembling slightly. He was crying when I left him to go to the bathroom. He just wants a buddy. I looked at my mom again. She was holding up a dress, inspecting a loose thread. She wouldn't even notice I was gone for a minute. I just wanted to see the big robot with the lights. Okay, I said, just for a minute. The woman stood up and held out her hand. Just for a minute. I took her hand. It was dry and papery, but her grip was surprisingly firm. We walked out of the coat section. We walked out of Dillard's. The noise of the mall hit us, a wall of chatter and footsteps. Where is he? I asked, looking around for a boy with a robot. Just a little further, sweetie. He's by the claw machines, she said, not looking down at me. She was walking faster now. Her legs were moving with a purposeful stride that didn't match her age. We passed the arcade. I slowed down. Wait, that's the arcade. Oh, he moved, she said quickly. He went to the food court to get a pretzel. You like pretzels, don't you? Yes, I said, but a small knot of confusion was starting to tie itself in my stomach. But you said he was crying. He was, she said. Her voice was tighter now. The honey was gone, replaced by something brittle. Come on, keep up. Her grip on my hand tightened. Her fingernails, painted a dark maroon, dug into the soft flesh of my palm. You're hurting me, I whined, trying to pull away. Stop it, she hissed. She didn't look at me. She was looking straight ahead, scanning the crowd. Her head was swiveling left and right like a radar dish. We were walking past the food court now. We weren't stopping. We were heading towards the south exit, the one near the movie theater, the one that led to the dark side of the parking garage. My mom doesn't know where I am, I said. My voice was rising in panic. The sensory overload of the mall, the lights, the noise, was starting to feel like a nightmare. The faces of the people passing by were blurs. Why wasn't anyone looking at us? Why didn't anyone see that this lady was hurting my hand? She knows, the woman lied. I told her. We're going to the car. My grandson is in the car. You said he was at the arcade, I yelled. She yanked my arm so hard my shoulder popped. I stumbled, my sneakers squeaking on the polished floor. Be quiet, she snapped. She stopped walking and bent down, grabbing my face with her other hand. Her eyes were magnified by her thick glasses. They weren't kind anymore. I froze. They were flat. The threat was ridiculous to an adult, terrifyingly, but to a 7-year-old? If you say one more word, I will tell your mother. Tears welled up in my eyes, hot and stinging. Do you want to go to jail? Good, she whispered. Now walk. We were 50 feet from the glass doors. Outside, the sky was a bruised purple. It was raining. I could see the water streaking down the glass. I didn't want to go into the rain. I wanted the warm lights. I wanted my mom. Internal alarm bells were ringing in my head. A primal instinct that screamed danger. I knew, with absolute certainty, that if I went through those doors, I would never see my bedroom again. We passed a security guard. He was leaning against a pillar, eating a donut, looking at a girl in a kiosk. I opened my mouth to scream, but the woman squeezed my hand so hard, I thought my bones would crush. mother pushing a stroller gasped. The woman stumbled, almost dragged down by my sudden drop. People stopped. A teenager with a skateboard turned around. A mother pushing a stroller gasped. The woman looked around, her face twisting from grandmotherly concern to animalistic panic. She looked at me, lying on the floor, screaming, and then she looked at the crowd gathering around us. "He's having a tantrum," she said to the teenager, trying to force a laugh. "Just a tantrum." "Hey," a man's voice boomed. It was the security guard. He was walking toward us, his donut gone. "Is there a problem here, ma'am?" The woman looked at the guard. She looked at the exit doors just 20 feet away. She looked at me. She dropped my hand. "I don't know this kid," she muttered. And then she ran. She didn't shuffle. She sprinted. She pushed through the double glass doors and vanished into the rain and the gloom of the parking garage. The security guard knelt beside me. "Hey, buddy, you okay? Was that your grandma?" I couldn't speak. I just shook my head, sobbing so hard I couldn't breathe. It took 10 minutes for them to find my mom. When she came running up to the security office, her face was pale, her eyes wild. She had been screaming my name in Dillard's, tearing through the racks of clothes. She fell to her knees and hugged me so hard it hurt. She smelled like fear and sweat and that periwinkle dress she never bought. We sat there on the floor of the security office for an hour, just holding on to each other. They never found the woman. The cameras saw her enter the garage and get into a tan sedan, but the license plate was covered with mud. I'm 32 now. I have my own kids. And whenever we go anywhere, a park, a store, a mall, I hold their hands. I hold them tight. And I watch the grandmas. I watch the nice ladies with the kind smiles. Because I know that sometimes the monster doesn't have claws. Sometimes she has a purse full of hard candies and a voice like warm honey. wasn't standing back. He was right up against the door, his face in the crack. He looked wrong. He was maybe 40, with skin that looked like gray dough. His eyes were bloodshot, heavy-lidded, and he smelled like stale cigarette smoke and unwashed clothes. He didn't look like a Dave. He looked like something that lived under a bridge. "Dave?" I asked, gripping the door handle with a sweaty palm. He stared at me for a second too long before answering. "Yeah, that's me." His voice was gravel, deep and scratchy. "You got the box?" "Right here," I said, gesturing to the table behind me. "You have the 200? He patted his pockets. A slow, lopsided grin spread across his face, revealing yellowed teeth. "Ah, shoot. I think I left the cash in the car. My wife drove. She's parked down the street." "Okay," I said. "I can wait." "It's freezing out here, man," he said, shivering in an exaggerated way. "You mind if I step inside the foyer while I call her to bring it up, just to get out of the wind?" Every alarm bell in my body went off at once. It was a primal scream from my lizard brain. Do not let him in. I can't, I stammered. "My dog. He's aggressive with strangers. I have to keep him locked in the back." I didn't have a dog. Dave's eyes narrowed. He looked past me into the dark living room. He seemed to be listening. Listening for the sound of a dog. Listening for roommates. "I don't hear a dog," he whispered. The air in the hallway seemed to drop 10 degrees. "He's sleeping," I said. "Look, just go get the cash. I'll be here." I moved to close the door. Quick as a snake, he jammed his boot into the gap. My heart hammered against my ribs. "Hey," I shouted, "move your foot." "You're alone, aren't you?" he said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. He leaned in, his face pressing against the gap, his nose almost touching the chain. "College kids. Always gone for break. But not you." "Get out," I yelled, throwing my shoulder against the door. He laughed. It was a low, wet sound. Then, he pulled his hand out of his hoodie pocket. He wasn't holding a phone to call his wife. He was holding a box cutter. He clicked the blade out. Snick. "Open the door," he said flatly, "or I'm gonna cut this chain, come inside, and we're gonna have a much longer conversation." I didn't think. Panic took the wheel. I slammed my body weight against the door, crushing his foot. He roared in pain and yanked his boot back. I slammed the door shut and threw the deadbolt. I backed away, my hands shaking so violently I couldn't breathe. Bam! The door shuddered as he threw his entire body weight against it. "Open it!" he screamed. The facade was gone. The dad was gone. This was a monster. I turned and ran. Bam! I didn't grab the console. The wood frame splintered slightly near the lock. I grabbed my phone and sprinted into the kitchen. I grabbed the biggest knife from the butcher block, a chef's knife I used for chopping vegetables. I ran to the pantry, a small closet with a solid door, and locked myself inside. I slid down to the floor, curling into a ball amongst the bags of rice and canned beans. I dialed 911. "911, what is your emergency?" "Someone is breaking into my house," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "Please, hurry. He has a knife." "Where are you inside the house?" the operator asked calmly. "The pantry." "I'm hiding in the pantry." Suddenly, the banging on the front door stopped. The silence was worse than the noise. I held my breath, straining to hear over the sound of the wind outside. Had he left? Had he given up? heard the screen on the living room window rattle, then the dining room. He was moving systematically, looking for a viewpoint. Then he reached the kitchen window, the one right above the sink, the one I sometimes forgot to lock. I heard the screen rip, a jagged, tearing sound, then the squeal of the window sliding up. He was in. I clamped my hand over my mouth to stifle a sob. I could hear his boots hit the linoleum floor. Thump. "I know you're in here," he called out. His voice wasn't shouting anymore. It was a sing-song taunt. "Come out, little rabbit. I just want to play." I heard drawers opening and closing. He was looking for me. The operator was still on the line, whispering, "Officers are 2 minutes away. Stay quiet. Do not hang up." I heard his footsteps stop right outside the pantry door. I gripped the chef's knife with both hands, pointing it at the door. I made a silent promise to myself. If he opens this door, I am going to kill him. I saw the shadow of his feet under the gap of the door. He was standing right there. I could hear his breathing, heavy, ragged breaths. He reached for the doorknob. The knob jiggled. I squeezed my eyes shut, bracing for the end. Then, whoop, whoop. Blue and red lights flashed through the cracks in the pantry door. A siren wailed right outside the house. "Police! Come out with your hands up!" A voice bellowed from the front yard. I heard the man curse. I heard him run back toward the window. I heard the scuffle of him climbing out, and then shouting outside, "Get on the ground! Now!" I didn't come out of the pantry for 20 minutes, not until the police physically knocked on the door and told me it was safe. They caught him in the neighbor's yard. He had tried to jump a fence and twisted his ankle. When they searched him, they didn't just find the box cutter. In his back pocket, he had a coil of rope, a roll of duct tape, and a pair of women's underwear that definitely didn't belong to his wife. His name wasn't Dave. He was a drifter from 3 states over with a record for aggravated assault and stalking. I moved out the next day. I broke the lease, paid the fee, and slept on a friend's couch for a month. I still play video games, but I don't sell them. I don't sell anything. And if I'm home alone and the wind starts to howl, I check every lock in the house 3 times. Because I know that sometimes the monsters aren't under the bed. They're standing on your porch, asking if they can come in out of the cold.